Welcome back. We're again talking with Chirani, Meyer and Shirley Erwee about how school and home education differ from each other. And now we're going to discuss the more intangible things, the other benefits, the softer side of life. Chirani, will you kick us off with maybe a lifestyle of learning?
Yes, when people start homeschooling, they like to have a curriculum and they like to have school between the hours of 8 and 12, and then school's done for the day and off we go. But as you start to homeschool and you start getting a homeschooling mindset as a parent, you start to pick up all these little places and things that are actually learning opportunities. You develop an eye for it. So for instance, if you're going to pick up your car from the mechanic, while you're there watching the guy put the tire on, you might just say to him, would you mind my kids watching how you do that? And next thing you know, the hood's open and he's showing the kids where all the parts of the car are. And that's a learning experience. Or you might be in the kitchen and you're cutting up oranges and suddenly you realize, wait a minute, distractions. And then you call your child and say, look, I've cut the orange in half and now it's in quarters and now it's in eighths. And you see, you find a way that everything in life almost becomes a learning experience, actually to the point where your kids actually roll their eyes and they think, oh, mom's on it again. And they just come along and see. And it's such a nice way of helping them to understand that they're going to have to learn throughout their lives, especially in information age where things are changing so fast. So if you make learning exciting and very organic, not something you have to do when you're sitting down at a book, but something that happens through the natural course of a day, then it really gives them a very positive outlook on learning instead of, for instance, children who've been at school all the time and overburdened with work and curricula, and by the end of matric, they don't want to open another book and they're just tired of learning. They can't wait just to go to Europe for 3 years and do nothing because they're just exhausted and burnt out. So I think a lifestyle of learning is a very gentle and natural approach to help your child love learning and be curious, interested in the world around them.
Shirley, you have a house full of children. How do you manage sibling rivalry?
Well, child training is something that all parents have to do. And when you're homeschooling, you're forced to deal with these sort of character issues. And I must say, I soon discovered that I was being the mean mommy so much because the only tools I had were the sort of methods of behavior modification and punishment that I was raised with. And I had to quickly research better ways to train children. And I was blessed to be referred to some very good books that were about teaching respect for one another in the family. Because if we start off with an attitude of respect towards each other, and that includes parents respecting children and not thinking that we're there to dominate and control and, you know, manipulate them with threats of punishment, but you teach them to have respect for one another, then the rivalry actually doesn't become that great. And in a family where there are more than 2 children, the children soon learn that, you know, you have to fit in as part of the team. There isn't just one person competing for mom's attention. There are a lot of people competing for mom and dad's attention. And they just have to learn to accept that, you know, the world doesn't revolve around me. There are other people too. I think in a big family, it's easier for children to learn and accept those kind of lessons than in smaller families where they are just used to getting so much more attention from parents. And the upside is that they've always got siblings to give them time and attention as well. And it's just a different dynamic.
How do you think this differs from kids who go to school? Chirani, maybe?
Yes.
You also have a lot of...
Yes, I have 4 children. So yes, I think a very sad thing for me is I often hear moms say, I don't know what's happened to my kids. When they were little, they used to play so nicely together. And I realized that once the children go to school, they start to form their own social networks and they get their own friends and their own support systems. And often those support systems become more important than the ones they have at home. And the children tend to drift away from each other and from the family. And through homeschooling, I've noticed that children form very tight bonds because you are with your siblings 24/7 most of the time. And you just have to get on with them. And I think that's really important because I tell my kids, you know, friends come and go, but your siblings will be with you for the rest of your life. So it's really important that they try and have a very good relationship with each other and sort out the kinks and differences in personality while mom and dad are around to help them with those, those difficult issues. And hopefully it will foster good relationships that they will always be close later on in life, and they won't drift apart as many of us have experienced in our families.
I think
I remember.
I think it's so important that new parents realize that home education is not just about academics. And in fact, this relationship building and relationship skills and how to handle conflict are actually priceless skills, and you don't really learn them from the pages of a textbook. These can only be learned with somebody who cares enough to teach you. And unfortunately, in the school situation, teachers don't have the time or the motivation to teach these kind of skills to children. Parents have to teach them. So we're very blessed that we have more time with our kids, and they do rub each other up and they rub us up, and we all have to develop these skills.
Yeah, I think that's one of the benefits, that we can build into our children's character and we can model behavior to them. They're not dependent on only their peers to teach them these skills. Yeah, I'd like for you to touch on maybe stress management, freedom of expression. Do you think it's more, less, the same, different than from schools?
Would you like me to take that?
Yes.
Well, I always get told, very often I get told by my friends, oh, you homeschool, I could never do that. We just do homework together and I want to kill my children. And I think, but you know what? This poor child's been at school all day, extramurals in the afternoon, and you've had a hectic day at work. You've come home, it's been a rush for supper, it's been a rush for bath, and now you've got to sit with algebra. I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster. And many parents help their kids with work and with projects and all that because the teacher just can't manage to help each child. So the parent is actually educating the child at home, but just in a much more intense, stressful environment. I mean, we do practically what they're doing, but after a nice night of sleep and we're all fresh in the morning, we have the whole morning to do it. So I don't think many parents realize it, but they're actually home educating their children. But as I say, just under a lot more unfavorable conditions. And I think another problem with stress is that a lot of people choose to homeschool because their children are put under immense pressure at school because the curriculum is so heavily loaded and they can't deal with the workload. Some kids are also under terrible stress from bullies. And I've had terrible stories of moms telling me, my daughter's beautiful, she's intelligent, but, she's suicidal because she is so clever and she is so talented, she gets seen as a target. So what she does is put her head down and just try not to stick out. And, she can't shine there because she'll be shot down. So at home, your child has got the freedom to express themselves, to excel where they want to excel, to fail where they want to fail without somebody pushing them down for either. And it's a place where you can allow them to be built up. It's almost like a greenhouse that a little seedling grows in. That you keep them there until they're strong enough to be transplanted into the world where the winds and the storm come. Where a lot of little kids are like little seedlings who are planted into the big bad world before they're strong enough to handle it. And very often they get damaged and then they have to be brought home and nurtured back to health again. So the home is a fantastic environment just for the child's emotional well-being as well.
Shirley, can you add something?
I think Chirani has answered it very well. I think there's way more stress when you are in that rat race and that school system than if you are at home. And when home educating parents are stressed, generally the first question I ask them is, what kind of curriculum are you using? And very often those are the parents that are using a full service curriculum that's just like doing school at home, and they're trying to keep up with the schedule and there's tests and assignments. And when I recommend to them that they choose a different approach and just relax and just breathe and just realize that they don't have to keep up with anybody. They're giving their children a customized education, and they'll get to the end of it when that child is ready. And when they realize that they're allowed to take that approach, they have a huge sigh of relief, and it's a huge mind shift. And then the whole family is able to actually enjoy learning together without mom nagging and kids being stressed out, and the drama that happens when parents are trying to force children to do things that they're not really enjoying. So you've got to change your approach if it is stressful.
Okay, so I think we've touched on quite a lot of differences between home education, and school. And yeah, it is quite a bit of a mind shift. And I thank you for your insight.
Thanks,
So we meet again.
Thanks, Anelle.